Just tell me how to do this. So essentially with those, you would go into Xcode, add a new target, pick the appropriate target, create it, you would get an activation, and then it's going to pop up, and you're going to see some things you probably haven't seen unless you've been doing iOS development for quite a while. So what you're going to see is a storyboard. Apple has not updated this since each one of those extensions were developed. So every time you start one of these, it's going to default you to a storyboard. I've been doing app development for over 10 years. I haven't probably touched the storyboard in 8 years. Pretty much, how do you start using these with a storyboard? So first, we're just going to burn it. We're just going to get rid of it, delete it. It's going away. So once you get rid of the storyboard, you're just left with your primary view controller and the info plist. So what you're going to need to do. All right, thank you. Again, my name is Vince Davis. I work at United Airlines. A few things about me. I do love Noki. I do love to travel. One of the things that I do work on primarily at United Airlines is live activities. We're actually one of the only few airlines that actually uses live activities outside of Flighty. They're not an airline, but so that's pretty much my day-to-day. So with that, I work a lot with extensions, and there's just a lot of extensions that we don't use on a day-to-day basis. Or if you've just started in iOS development over the past few years, you don't even know about. So pretty much for the agenda, I'm going to give you a quick intro to these features and extensions, implementing some of these extensions in the SwiftUI. We'll do a demo, and then hopefully we'll have enough time for question and answers. But somebody might be very impatient, and they might actually want the demo and the information now. So if you're one of those, you can actually use this to get the GitHub and the demo right now. So on the left is the actual GitHub repository if you want to take a picture of that. And on the right, there's a test flight, so you can actually see the app, have it working on your Apple Watch and your phone, and you can go along as I'm going through the presentation. So I'll leave that out for a quick second. All right. So this is the intro to the features and extensions. So these will be the ones that I'm going over again. There's action extension, share, notifications, iMessage, spotlight, app clips, quick actions, handoff, external screens, quick look preview. As you can see at the bottom, there's all these iterations where they actually came out, some as early as iOS 3 and as recent as iOS 14. So if you would have had to been doing iOS development for over 10 years to have seen all of these over the course of iOS development. With this, we'll start off with the action and share extension because they're sort of the same. So essentially with this, it allows you to be in a different app and share that information into your app. With the share extension, you'll see in the demo that it'll show up at the top and then the actions show up at the bottom. They have similar feel of what they do. Apple's guidelines are if you're just sharing content, use the share extension. If you have multiple actions that you want to do the action extension. They're not well as far as adhering to that themselves. So it's really how many features, how many actions do you want to have? If you have one primary action for your extension, you might just want to stick with the share because that's prominent, it's an icon. If you have multiple actions, you might want to go with the action sheet because it'll show up, you can have multiple actions, but you can only have one share. Again, and this was introduced in iOS 8. So next we'll go on to notifications. And notifications have been around for a while, but the actual extensibility of notifications really was introduced in iOS 10. So with that, you'll be able to do more rich interactions with notifications. So where you can have polls, you can do slideshows, you can actually even show video inside of your notifications. This has been around for 7 years, and there's not a lot of apps that actually take full advantage of that with it. They can be interactable, they can be tappable, and also these also work with Vision OS and with watchOS as well. So with watchOS, you can actually have video play inside of a notification. In Vision OS, you can have interactive tappable notifications as well. So this can work pretty much across the whole span of your iOS or your OS development. So the next, briefly, would be iMessage. So iMessage is, again, not one of those that are used often, but it can be another way that an entry point into your app. You can post images, any type of attachment. You can have small messages that go into the app. And it's just another entry point to where you could possibly, if this works with your feature sets for your app, this could be something you use. And again, this was also introduced in iOS 10. Next, we'll go into Spotlight and Quick Look. Spotlight really is indexing important features of your app so they can be searched outside of your app. So in this example, I'm searching for Alberto. It shows up in my Spotlight in my app. And on the left, you see just without a preview, and then on the right, you'll see how it can look if you actually use the preview view controller, and then you can add a little bit of spice to how that preview looks outside of the app. But with Spotlight, you're really just figuring out what type of information inside of your app that you actually want to be shown outside and exposed so that it can be searchable across the whole phone ecosystem. And again, Spotlight has been around since iOS 9. Preview in some way, shape, or form has been around since iOS 4. And we'll go on to Quick Actions. So Quick Actions isn't used by much indies, but it allows you to do a quick action to where you can do a long press on your iPhone or iPad app, and then it can easily deep link you into something into your app. In this case, I have a deep link into a specific speaker. You can have it do multiple things. You can, for mail, you can like search, start a new chat. So it really varies on how you want, how you can use that as far as how it'll work with your app. Then we have Handoff. So with Handoff, it allows you to do the continuity between all your devices. So in this example, if you have if you're looking at your app on your watch and you happen to open up your phone, it'll show up at the bottom pan to where you can deep link into the same activity that you were working on. If you have also a Mac equivalent app, it will also show up in your dock when you open up on your iPhone or your watch, and it'll tell you which particular device that you're deep linking to. When you click it, then you can just finish that same activity onto that particular device. And again, this was introduced in iOS 8. External screen, we'll go to App Clips. So App Clips is another way that, again, not a lot of people use, but it's really a way to get the core feature of your app to as much people as possible in the smallest amount. So with this, I made an app clip that just has the speaker. So the app, your main app would do a lot, but then in your app clip, you want to make it as small as possible and just give out something that you can easily quickly demo, or something that you can have that you can quickly show off to other people. A lot of restaurants use it. I'm pretty sure you've noticed it around. Not a lot of apps outside of like restaurant or service use it, but there's so many ways that you could actually use an app clip. And not necessarily an extension, but there's something that is very underutilized is external screen. So when you connect your iPad or your iPhone to an external screen, whether it's via AirPlay or via hardwire, you'll be able to not just mirror it, but also extend what your presentation on. So in this case, I connected it to an external display. I have it at showing presentations, and then I can cycle through on the actual device. The screen that you're presenting to is a non-interactive screen, so there's no touches, so you need a way to actually interact with it as well. So that's all fine and dandy. So just tell me how to do this. So we'll start off with action, share, notification, iMessage, and quick loop, because they all pretty much start in the same way. So essentially with those, you would go into Xcode, add a new target, pick the appropriate target, create it, you would get an activation, and then it's going to pop up, and you're going to see some things you probably haven't seen unless you've been doing iOS development for quite a while. So what you're going to see is a storyboard. Apple has not updated this since each one of those extensions were developed. So every time you start one of these, it's going to default you to a storyboard. I've been doing app development for over 10 years. I haven't probably touched a storyboard in 8 years. So pretty much, how do you start using these with a storyboard? So first, we're just going to burn it. We're just going to get rid of it, delete it. It's going away. So once you get rid of the storyboard, you're just left with your primary view controller and the info plist. So what you're going to need to do is go actually inside of the info plist, and you're going to see a key and a string for your main storyboard. We're just going to wipe that out. Just get rid of that altogether. What we're going to do is we're going to replace that with another string, and that's going to be your NS extension principal class. So what it's pointing to is it's going to point to the particular target that you're looking at, and then also point to the actual view controller that you're going to reference. In the example, I have view controller, but if you're looking at the image on the right, it would actually be action view controller, and that's just telling it that's going to be your primary entry point for your extension. And once you do that, once you go inside of that actual view controller, well, before that, we're going to need to make an extension on UI view controller so that we can use a SwiftUI view. So this is just, you can actually just do that code inside of the view controller, but you're probably going to have multiple extensions, so you probably just want to make an extension on that yourself so that you can use that in multiple places so you don't have to write all this boilerplate point code multiple times. So in this case, this is just an extension on the view controller to where I can add in my own SwiftUI view controller with SwiftUI view. Then once you have that, you would go inside of that view controller in the view did load function, and then you would just simply put that in. And that's pretty much it, but not really. So each extension has its own set of methods or delegates after you do the view did load. I'll go a little bit about that in the demo, and then also if you've already downloaded it on GitHub, you can pretty much see how that is. But we'll talk about that a little later. So then after that, you have your notification and quick actions. Those take a little bit more because they're going to need you to reference the app delegate from UIKit in some way, shape, or form. If you're doing a purely Swift UI app, you probably don't have the app delegate in there at all. So what you're going to have to do is add this one line of code to your thing so you can tell it that you're going to be referencing the app view controller or your app delegate. And then you also have to add in the app delegate class. So it's going to vary depending on your use case, but this is just high level, like if I were to implement in some type of extra notification stuff, this is what you would have to do. I put a little caveat at the bottom that there's also more delegates methods that you'll have to input, but that's all going to vary depending on if you're doing Windows, if you're doing quick actions, if you're doing notifications, it really depends. But we can go over a little bit of that in a bit. And actually that time is now. So we will go into a quick demo. And then again, if you hadn't already gotten the GitHub and you've gotten the iTunes link, you can do that right now before I start the demo. Okay. All right. So this is the Swift app I made over here. So you can see it just has basic speaker information. It has extension information, but that's really not important. It was just so I can get some information in here. But it's just to show off the things that I was just talking about today. So like if you were to long press on it, you would get the quick actions that I talked about. And then if you tapped on Alberto, it would quickly deep link you into Alberto. If we were to go into an image, that's not an image. Go into an image, and you would do the share function. Here it is. The share view controller would pop up here, as well as the action that I made. It's also down here. In this demo, I have them both pointing to the same thing, but in your scenario, you would probably have them pointing to different. Your share would be doing something completely different than your action, but that's all dependent on you. So in this case, all I'm doing is just pulling in that photo that I pulled in, what I shared inside of the Photos app. So that's that. Also, this works with Spotlight. So if I were to search any of the speakers, so if I do Jane is going to pop up there. If you hard press on it, it's going to go to the preview, the custom preview that I made for that. Also with previews, you can also add action buttons. So for this, in the demo, it's not set up, but that's also how you can also do extra actions and stuff with that as well. I also have this working in Vision Pro. So I'll do test as far as video. So these are push notifications. So these are just the test files here. So if you just drag these on here, you'll see that a push notification came up there. And that the one thing about Vision OS is that these buttons don't work. So the app is the feature is completely interactive. So whatever you put inside of your Swift view, you just have to make sure it's interactive. Because if you want them to interact with it, you'll have to actually tap on it versus actually hitting this. Versus if I were to do this in iOS, let's move this over here. Nope. And you press and hold, you would actually use the play, pause buttons down here. So if I would tap that, it would start the video. And then if I want to pause, I would do that as well. So Vision OS, you actually have to build in interactivity inside of the view, where if you're using this on iOS, you can actually use the buttons that are provided when you're making your notification to do it that way. Pretty much how this was set up. Let's see if that's big enough. So as far as setting this up, what I would recommend you definitely doing in your projects is having some type of either shared or having some type of like local SPM to where the information that you're going to be sharing across your extensions, across your app, across watchOS, VisionOS, is all in one shared environment to where you're not having to go into the target and then, for example, have it click on multiple targets here, where you just have it in one shared environment. You can just have that as whatever that shared information is as a framework, and then you can just attach the framework version, having to play around with the targets and everything like that. One thing I did want to show is the extra work you would have to do as far as getting this set up. So this was the app delegate that I had in the talk. There's also a few other things you would have to do for that. So you would have to, one, set up your app delegate here. And you'll excuse this code because I made the code work for all the environments. So this would work on iOS, VisionOS, macOS, and watchOS as well. So there's going to be a lot of macros as far as if this, if not. So that's why all that's around there. But you would have to set up your app delegate class. For quick actions, you also have to set up a scene. So there's also this information here that you would also have to set up to get quick actions to work for your scene. And then you would also have to set up a scene delegate as well. For your notifications, as far as setting up your app delegate, you also have to set up your notification info, and then these extra methods and delegates are right here. But yeah, so you have the GitHub out there. You can play around with that. You can feel free to ask me any questions once you play around with it. I'm here pretty much for the rest of the day. You can reach out to me or whatever after today as far as for that. So let's go back to the presentation. So this is what we went through. I know it was very, very quick. There's a lot more that you can do with it. I just really wanted to have this talk so it can inspire you to actually start to dive a little deeper into these, figure out the use cases for your apps to see which one of these that you can put in your app. It'd be great if you could use them all. I know that doesn't apply for every single app that you use, but at least you can leave here today figuring out one of these extra extensions that I can add in and add that extra bit of delight. Because there's just things that it really exposes your app outside of your app, and it just gives your users that extra, like, oh, I didn't know the app could do that. Oh, I didn't know the app could do that. With that, I also have inside of the GitHub and also on this next screen here, just some of the resources that I've looked at to get some of this information for you. All these are pretty good. A lot of the ones dealing with extensions are going to be slightly outdated because they're talking about using storyboards and a lot of UI view controller stuff. So if you just take away the little bit of how I showed you how to implement SwiftUI, you can just bypass all of that when you're talking about it and just go directly into the meat and potatoes as far as how do I get the certain extension set up. And I just want to give out a quick thanks to Peter. I sat here in his talk yesterday, and he did an excellent explanation of how to add a little spice and a little bit of more information to animations to your keynote. So that really helped me out, especially adding in the code in the final hour. So again, thanks to Peter for that. And grazie. Thank you.